revenue. Obviously, you pay your debt with your tax revenue. Mr. Speaker, in the same budget statement, the next page, page 230, expenditure under Appendix 2B, the government informed us that in the same period from January to end September 2021, they spent 25.3 billion Ghana cedis to pay interest only. Interest. Mr. Speaker, again, I refer you to Appendix 2C. The government is informing us that they spent 9 billion Ghana cedis for the purposes of amortization, which means you are paying down your debt. To put the two together, we spend an amount of 34.4 billion Ghana cedis of the 37 billion tax revenue to service interest alone, debt servicing. The Speaker, in simple put, we actually spent 93% of our tax revenue to service our interest. This is certainly a case of an acute debt overhang. Mr. Speaker, let me also point to the fact that this government inherited a debt of about 120 billion Ghana cedis. Today, our minister responsible for finance has said to all of us that the debt as of September 2021 has become 341.8 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, in fact, if you do the math, it means that within a space of 4.5 years, you have added 221 billion Ghana cedis to the debt stock, representing almost 65% of our GDP in 4.5 years. Mr. Speaker, that is why I repeat that this economy is sick from sardosis. It's self-inflicted. The sardosis is self-inflicted. We are witnessing stagflation. We are witnessing acute public debt overhang. Mr. Speaker, that is the situation we find ourselves, unfortunately. But let me take you to what is happening. Mr. Speaker, this sardosis calls for an important decision. As a country, we have to make choices. In fact, a very difficult choices. A choice to fix this sardosis at home, or probably go to the hospital to fix this sardosis. But Mr. Speaker, for me, what matters and what is most critical is taking the right prescription with the right dosage. Mr. Speaker, I will take you through as to whether this government is taking the right prescription in solving our problems. Mr. Speaker, I beg to say that the budget that has been presented to you, to us, is clearly very unrealistic, unacceptable, in fact, incredible. Mr. Speaker, I will take you to, in fact, Appendix 3B of the budget statement. Mr. Speaker, even before I take you to Appendix 3B, let me first of all take you to
the financial statement was 400 million Ghana cedis. And mind you, the 400 million Ghana cedis included the amount of money needed to establish regional offices and district offices. When the budget was presented, and I wasn't in this house, I challenged the figures and as to whether those figures could achieve the purpose for which NAPO was created in the first place. You had in the budget that 400 million, which included regional and district offices. And I've had the opportunity to have ever worked with a similar program, the National Youth Employment Program. And at that time, I challenged the system that you needed not less than 200 million Ghana cedis to establish the regional and district offices and get the manpower to manage that office. But the figure was not the issue. What was the issue? Was the 100,000 people they claimed they were going to engage. Because you needed to do a simple calculation. And Right Honorable Speaker, with all due respect, running the government is not like selling kelewele on the street or my grandmother selling cocoa on the street. That whatever money you spend must be approved by this house. And if this house doesn't approve the budget and the appropriation, you cannot go ahead to spend any money. Now, if you had 400 million as the allocation for NAPCO, and you claim you are going to engage 100,000 people, and each of the beneficiary was going to be paid 700 Ghana cedis. My 5-year-old girl, whose birthday, Right Honorable Speaker, celebrated yesterday, simply can do the arithmetic that 700 Ghana cedis times 100,000 will give you 70 million. And 70 million times 12 will give you 840 million. argument in response ahead was that it could be captured. So if you needed 840 million to take care of just allowances of this benefit, the setting up of regional and district offices, the argument they made in the mid-year budget, I challenge my colleagues to go look at the 2018 was mentioned. This is the biggest scam ever pulled on the people of this country. When you take this statement, the budget line for NAPCO is 520 million. And the minister claimed again they are engaging 100,000 people. 100,000 people, each is going to be paid 700 Ghana cedis. Just do the calculation with your phone and send it to me, how much it is going to cost this state. 520 million is not 840 million for allowance. It's allowances of beneficiaries alone. And that excludes administrative costs. That excludes the salaries of people who are engaged to work for the purposes of NAPCO in the regional and district offices. So that 520 million simply cannot suffice. I know they will come back and tell us that, of course, we take care of it in the mid-year budget, just as they did in 2018, and the response will be the same. Once again, I can bet my last penny that they may not mention NAPCO in the mid-year budget for 2022. Right, Honorable Speaker, to prove to you that those numbers they claim they created is not true. That explain why. The unemployment rate is increasing. Under the NDC, in 2016, when we were leaving office, the unemployment rate was 6.8. Dr. Bawumia said that it was mismanagement, that it was incompetence that occasioned the 6.8. And I remember in 2017, when there was a reduction from 6.8 to 6.7, we told them that those reductions could not be occasioned by the magic wand in terms of policy intervention to create jobs for the young people of this country. They said they did that. Today, this same statement, we are being told that youth unemployment is 12.6%. These are not my words. And in fact, in the mid-year budget, unemployment was 8.4. The irony is that you cannot be creating jobs in hundreds of thousands. Planting for food, you claim you created 150,000. NAPCO 100,000. Yet, the unemployment rate in this country is increasing. But it is not surprising, Right Honorable Speaker. The reason is that the president figures are different from the Minister of Finance figures. Minister of Finance figures are different from the NAPCO boss figures for the purposes of my colleagues. The NAPCO boss stated publicly that they engaged 117,000 young people under NAPCO. You have the president who quoted 92,000. And you have the Minister of Finance in this house who quoted 100,000. So certainly, two of them will not be telling us the truth. I think that they will choose for us which among the three is not telling the people of this country the truth about the figures of the jobs they created under the NAPCO. Because certainly 117,000 is not the same as 92,000, and it certainly cannot be the same as 100,000. Right, Honorable Speaker, it is only in this year's budget that we have been told to find X. And it reminded me of my search I learned at the SSS, or equation. The Minister of Finance, when he appeared before this house, and in talking about Agenda 111, by the way, which was christened Agenda 111 because we were told they were creating 111 district hospitals. Read in the statement, when he made the statement here, 1111 is now 124, including 7 regional hospitals and 3 psychiatric hospitals. But he said that cadastral plans have been done and about X number of sites. X. When he got there, he paused. Clearly, this statement was hurriedly done, or perhaps that explained why the minister had to deliver the financial statement almost 1 o'clock. When we were communicated to that the delivery was going to be done around 10 o'clock, that there was last-minute changes in the figures. Right, Honorable Speaker, I have been engaged in agriculture, and one of the means by which you can generate the needed jobs for the people of this country, particularly the youth who do not have the opportunity to enjoy formal education, is to look at them how you can access, agriculture opportunities for them to do something meaningful. At the poultry farm is collapsed. And it is collapsed not because I couldn't manage it. It is collapsed because the feed with which I was producing for the poultry was produced from maize. And throughout my young age in Tamale, I never witnessed a bag of maize sold at 200 Ghana cedis, except under this government. It went up to 400 plus Ghana cedis. Yet we have been told by the Minister for Agric that yes, my wife hasn't told me that there are increases in the prices of foodstuffs, and therefore no one can say that foodstuff prices have increased. I can understand. When you begin to analyze the pain of people or the suffering of people at a distance, it leads you to some of these statements. And I urge my friends that haven't taken into consideration the challenges confronting us, the unemployment of 8.4, the youth unemployment of 12.6, that has never happened under any economic management. And in fact, when we had His Excellency Ali Mama of blessed memory, he was not an economist. We never experienced less than 1 growth in the economy. When we had His Excellency President Mahama as the manager of the economy of this country, we never experienced a growth of less than 1%. The only economist who led the economic management team is the economic messiah, the person who changed the economy of Zimbabwe, His Excellency Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, and he recorded less than 1% economic growth in this country. It takes an incompetent genius to be able to do what these two vice presidents who manage the economy of this country could not do. It takes an incompetent genius who indeed lectured, paraded every university, and interestingly, he is no longer using the Central University. It is now Ashase University. And it's understandable why the Central University is no longer being used. The boss on the way are waiting to ask him questions, and therefore he must run away. Right, Honorable Speaker, you cannot create the needed jobs when corruption is spreading like prairie fire. And interestingly, right, Honorable Speaker, take the 2017 financial statement. Every single paragraph in that statement is pregnant with corruption and how they were going to fight corruption. And 2018, they began moving away from the word corruption. If you take this 2021, financial statement, the word corruption is mentioned only 2 times. Only 2 times. And that 2 times is not talking about how they are fighting corruption. The reason is simple. We have never accused this government of being the creator of corruption. As a matter of fact, if I can borrow President Kufuor's description, he said that corruption started from Adam. It is understandable. The difference between President Kufuor, the difference between President Mills, the difference between President Rawlings, and the difference between President Mahama and the current president is that he has perfected corruption. As a matter of fact, the president fighting anybody who is fighting corruption. And that is the reason why, even in the debate, they don't have the temerity, they don't have the courage to mention corruption. Because corruption is now a word that is a taste of appointees of this government. And if it is a sour on the taste of the leader of this country, certainly it will be an absolute sour on the taste of the people. It is not surprising that the person who they appointed to do the work for corruption and deal with people who are indeed engaged in corruption, unfortunately, that person had to leave. And I'll conclude with how he described His Excellency the President, that he is the mother sapient of corruption. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Honorable Speaker, to contribute to this statement and call on my friends that please, I beg you, let your consciences reign. Let us, in one word, in one position, reject this budget, which is Christian, by a name that is mockery to the people of this country. I thank you for the opportunity. Yeah.
Honorable Philip Baswa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to add my voice to the economic policy of government for 2022. Mr. Speaker, the budget is a clear indication of how far the MPP government has come and is willing to go in is pursuant of improving our economy, especially after the chaotic and traumatizing last 2 years the entire world has experienced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, His Excellency the President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, since assumption of office, has been consistent with his policies and programs aimed at creating jobs for the taming unemployed youth as was inherited. Mr. Speaker, we can best understand the present employment situation and the success made when we view things in retrospect. When Honorable Montara was speaking, he made mention of the fact that the NDC government left office with the unemployment rate of 7.8%. In fact, according to Ghana Living Standard Survey, the unemployment rate around 2015 was 11.9%. Mr. Speaker, according to a May 2016 World Bank report by Sarah Johnson, dubbed the landscape of job in Ghana, it posted that about 48% of youth between 18 to 24 were jobless. In 2016, the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research estimated that 250,000 young men and women enter the Ghanaian labor market yearly. Their research indicated that the formal sector employed only 2% of them, constituting 5,000 out of the 250,000 graduates. Mindful of the problem of unemployment in the country, the president at the start of the term in office began to put in place programs and policies to ensure that the unemployment situation in the country is brought down to the barest minimum. Mr. Speaker, as has been repeatedly stated, the global pandemic has indeed affected all sectors of our economy, including employment and job sector. But thankfully, the firm shock absorbers put in place by government in the form of schemes, policies, structures, and programs have ensured that our country and the citizens are in a relatively good place. Mr. Speaker, in the area of employment over the last 5 years, the government policies and programs have gained the trust of the citizens. We do admit that more can and should be done, but also realize that it is very impressive what the government has done in a very short period of time in the area of employment. The government has implemented a number of programs, with the current ones being the Nation Builders Corps, which has recruited 100,000 youth across the country. Recruiting 100,000 youth across the country, according to paragraph 28 of the budget statement. Out of this impressive number, about 35,000 of these recruits have secured permanent jobs after their training, after their training, according to paragraph 410 of the budget statement. The Youth Employment Agency has also continued to do tremendous work on it, as it has enrolled 80,538 beneficiaries. Mr. Speaker, the National Afforestation Programs in the period since the government took office over the helm of the leadership has engaged 44,682 youth across the country. Mr. Speaker, the government, when we speak of employment, did not end with these youth programs, but also employ almost 30,000 Ghanaians into various key services sectors such as education, information and communication, health and social work. In the area of skills training, just as Honorable Rekubet did mention, government through collaboration effort of many different institutions and bodies, such as the National Vocational Training Institute, Opportunities Industrialization Centers Ghana, and the Integrated Community Centers for Employable Skills, trained a total of 7,472 persons in various trades and vocational skills to 2021, according to paragraph 965 of the budget. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana school feeding over the last year has also served as an employment tool, as the program provided employment for 32,496 caterers and created a ready market for local farmers, according to paragraph 1043 of the budget statement. Mr. Speaker, the operationalization of the Ghana Cares initiative in 2021 has also helped to protect businesses after the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted activities. This program has helped provide the employers and employees of various small and medium-scale business. These programs and policies have definitely proven to be timely and effective in battling the enormous problem of unemployment the government inherited. The government realized it is not enough, and rather than rest on its laurels, continues to push and deliberate on more creative and effective ways to remain on course to reducing unemployment. Out of this dedication to the reduction of unemployment, the You Start initiative has been proposed under the Ghana Cares program, according to paragraph 414 of our budget. Mr. Speaker, this initiative is unique from any that we have had in this country. The You Start will be a vehicle for supporting youth entrepreneurs to gain access to capital, training, and technical skills, mentoring to enable them launch and operate their own businesses. You Start will support you-led enterprises with the following products: soft loans of up to 50,000 Ghana cedis to help startups, in particular by young graduates and school leavers, and small businesses to expand. A standardized loan package of between 100,000 Ghana cedis at concessional rate for small and medium-scale enterprises from financial institutions. Mr. Speaker,
One member, you have 1 minute more.
with this initiative, the government is putting the power into the hands of the youth through entrepreneurship. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, we can agree that we are not where we wish to be yet as a government in the country, but it is an undeniable fact that we are not where we were before this government took over the helms of leadership. We have steadily been moving forward and will continue to do so with the help of everyone in the country. And we all need to contribute our best to building this nation of ours. Having said this, Mr. Speaker, I move to support the motion that this honorable House approve the 2022 budget so that we can continue to move forward as a nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Full Alex Adwaku Mensa. Very well. He's not around, so I should move on. Then I'll move on to Honorable Festus Ewua Kofi. All right. I'll cross their names out. So, and now I go to Honorable Betty Crosby Mensa.
Right, Honorable Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute to the budget statement for the year 2022. Mr. Speaker, an average of 120,000 young ladies get pregnant in this country every year. An average of 120,000 young ladies get pregnant in this country every year. And out of the 112,000, 109,000 of these young ladies are within the age brackets of teenage. Whilst we have 2,800 of these young children which falls within the ages of 10 years and 14 years. And one may think that this is definitely an issue of concern that we were Honorable House to consider in the 2022 budget. Mr. Speaker, the majority of these children, in fact, the victims of pregnancy, actually falls in our dear, in fact, governing party's stronghold, that is in the Ashanti region of Ghana, which currently has over 17 teenage girls being affected when it comes to issues of teenage pregnancy. However, you observe through the budget statement that government is either inadequately making provision to curb the menace that is currently affecting the country. Now, I would like us to refer to the budget statement, page 204, paragraph 1034. And I read, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection collaborated with stakeholders to embark on school and youth outreach programs. The program satisfied 1,262 young ladies and 185 young men in the Ashanti region, Central region, Eastern region on their sexual and reproductive health rights. Mr. Speaker, out of the 112,000 cases of teenage pregnancy, we have a government committed to providing sensitization to less than 2,000 young people of this country. And I think definitely this is an area and this is an issue of concern. Mr. Speaker, not too long ago, about 2 weeks ago, members of Young Parliamentarian Forum, members of the Population Committee, in collaboration with UNFPA, the privilege of meeting young people in the Central region to interact and understand some of the basic issues and some of the causes of teenage pregnancy. In fact, some of the participants of the program included the Gender Department of the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection. So one was expecting that government will be committed to more education for our young girls, more sensitization programs, mentorship programs, and programs that seems to address these young people, their menstrual hygiene and the likes. Mr. Speaker, as I sit here, the issues that came out of that noble meeting was the removal of insensitive taxes on women's sanitary pads. And I was expecting to hear the Minister of Finance say something about it, instead of rather encouraging unnecessary taxes such as the e-transaction tax. Mr. Speaker, if government could not even make sanitary pads free for our young girls, which of course we believe that some of this financial crisis make them vulnerable to the opposite sex. Mr. Speaker, I also want to tackle on an issue that has made our country, Ghana, a laughing stock in the international community. Mr. Speaker, if you have had the opportunity to listen to BBC News, if you have had the privilege to listen to the CNN, Al Jazeera, and the like, you realize that in the last 2 years, there was a publication of about 20,000 young people being trafficked on our water lake. Again, one was expecting the government's preparedness to put up strategies and programs in place to ensure that these young children that are being paraded, that are being trafficked, the issue can be addressed and resolved. Unfortunately, there was little or nothing said in that direction. Mr. Speaker, most often what we see is NGOs, international NGOs, actually leading the fight against child trafficking without actually having knowledge of our cultural and social standards and settings of these young people. We were expecting that as a government should take the lead when it comes to issues that affect children of our great country. Taking up leadership so that not just NGOs who do not understand what goes on, but rather promoting programs that in the end will salvage the future of these children. We sat around and we discussed, and we said a sensitive government should be looking at building and establishing schools, basic schools in hard-to-reach communities, such as on the islands in the Afram Plains, so that these children whose parents think that using them on the lake serves as a trade or as a way of enterprising them, they will be given equal opportunities to go to school and learn the basic things that every child is entitled to in this country. Mr. Speaker, we're also expecting to hear some sort of skills development, capacity building, funds being available to some of these women who are affected, so that in the end, they will not see fishing or sending their children to masters as an alternative, but rather they will be well-resourced and equipped to protect their young ones. Yeah. And that, Mr. Speaker, I was expecting to hear more from the Minister of Finance and some programs and plans that have been put in place to protect our young children. Mr. Speaker, again, I feel that a department that is under the President's office, that is MASLOG, should be well equipped to be able to take up some of these challenges, such as skills development for young ones, empowering just women, in fact, I'll call them the marginalized in our society, for them to be well equipped to take care of their children. Mr. Speaker, I want to use this opportunity to appeal to you that an additional responsibility is hereby made to your committee, that is your Committee on Gender, Children and Social Protection, to be able to to monitor and assess the impact of MASLOG on young women, and the impact they make in our social protection. Mr. Speaker, I want to also use this opportunity. Post-COVID, we believe that inequality is on the rise globally, world, and Ghana is no exception. The gap between the rich and the poor, Mr. Speaker, has definitely widened. And as I went through the budget, I was expecting strategic programs that will be put in place to actually bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. Mr. Speaker, I ask this basic question. When we look at the new taxes that are being introduced in our budget statement, when we look at the increments in our fees and charges, how is it going to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor? How is it going to protect the poor and the marginalized in our society? And I think definitely this is an issue of concern that we all need to look at. Mr. Speaker, let me just cite a little example, especially with the e-transaction levy. A young woman who is earning not more than 10,000 Ghana cedis a month decide on the medical situation of the mother to transfer 400 Ghana cedis, or let me just make it 200 Ghana medical reasons. The 200 Ghana cedis is charged with the e-levy before it even gets to the mother. Now, this is going to be one-time transaction for the whole month, and the threshold we are told is supposed to be 3,000. Yeah. So in that case, how is that child or how is that woman going to get a refund for the said transaction, since it is done once the transaction is being made? Mr. Speaker, again, a critical look at the increment in fees and charges. A young woman in a constituency in Donkokrom, in Afram Plains to be specific, who wants to do a birth registration for her child, and just to find out that the birth certificate charges has been increased by about 15% or more. How is that going to really indeed bridge the gap between the rich and the poor? Again, Mr. Speaker, I think that this budget indeed is insensitive to the plight of young people, to the plight of the poor, to the plight of the marginalized in our society, and therefore, on behalf of my committee and the minority caucus, we will say no to the approval of this budget. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah.
Festus Awada Kofi. Sorry, Awua Kofi.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute on the debate on the floor. And I believe at the end of this Ajinkwa budget will be wholly approved by the House. Mr. Speaker, during the year 2021, Gender, Children and Social Protection Ministry undertook a number of activities. There was an outreach program that targeted about 1,260 youth and 185 young ladies. They also organized community sensitization program for 370 traditional areas. And children rights promotion and protective development program were also held in some selected districts and municipalities. They also continue to support the vulnerable, especially the children and the disintegrated family. The LEAP program also granted 344,023 households and registered 76% of these LEAP people on the NHIS. Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of programs that I cannot mention that were undertaken by the Gender Ministry. We are very grateful to the government for getting his commitment to ensure that the disbursement of the fund for the people with disability is closely monitored. And they are also advocating, at least for next year, that the passage of the affirmative action bill is successfully carried out. Above all, in spite of the COVID and the constraints in the government pens, we were able to feed 3,448 people and 65 with 10,832 public schools. Mr. Speaker, had it not been funding constrained, I believe this figure would have been doubled. It gives a clear indication that if government has adequate resources, more of such will be done. And that is why we are craving the support of the House to ensure that 2022 budget is approved. 2022 budget is an Adinkwa budget. It's a budget that is kick-starting the youth start, a budget that is going to expand and provide job opportunities for our youth. A budget that has also committed himself to the Public Financial Management Act. A budget that is going to do a lot of reforms in the energy sector. A budget that is going to continue government flagship projects in roads, health, and housing. And above all, also going to ensure the national security of the citizens. Amidst other social interventions, if you go to the budget, page 221 to page 223, there are a number of government interventions that were carried on. As a result of all, the government decided to ensure that the growth of the economy is pegged at 5.8%. Last 2 years, whereas the global economy was shrinking by 3.1%, and that of Sub-Saharan Africa 1.7%, we were able to still achieve a positive figure of 0.4%. And even last year, we had 4.7%, far higher than what the Sub-Saharan Africa had achieved. 2022, 5.8 is the target, whereas the global achievement is about 4.9. And these are going to be driven by the key sectors of the economy, being the agri, industry, and service industry. That is going to grow more than average of 5.8%. We have achieved it before. We've done it before. Yes, we are better managers of the economy. We have never gone beyond 4% of GDP growth. As a country, over the years, for the past decade, the lowest GDP growth were recorded in 2013, 2014 of 2%. But in spite of the COVID, we were able to grow beyond that. We need a solid banking sector, a very resilient banking sector to sustain the growth of the industry. Mr. Speaker, if I may be permitted to give you the figures. Before the financial reforms, we have total deposits of banks were just about 37 billion. As we speak, as of last September, it's 113 billion. And that of total asset before the reforms was also 60 billion. It's more than tripled, Mr. Speaker, to 170 billion. Loans, it's about 34 billion, and it's 48 billion. Non-performing loans, which peaked in 2014 at 23%, is now 15.8%. And just as of last September, it decreased to 16.8%. The banking sector is well adequate in terms of capital. The average capital adequacy is 19.9%, well above the potential limit of 11.5%. Policy rate, the least talk about is better because we inherited at the time when the policy rate was moving 20%, and T-bill the same thing. As we speak, T-bill is 12.5%. Mr. Speaker, the government has also introduced a number of tax rebates. That's to ensure that cost of living, production costs are also reduced. The VAT threshold, which used to be 200,000, has now been extended or increased to 500,000 Ghana cedis. And the flat rate has also been reviewed, or is in support of the domestic production. 2-year tax relief has also been given to the textile manufacturing companies, and there has been a reduction of the withholding tax of sales of processed goods, which in my area we are going to benefit so much, by 50% from 3% to 1.5%. Reforms is also going to take place in the energy sector. We were here when the country was plugged into doomsday. A number of purchasing power agreements were signed, very juicy ones. That is costing the country over $500 million a year. And the government is certainly going to undertake certain reforms in that area to bring down the tariff, and that will help the consumers. 2 economic indicators that we use to measure the purchasing power. When we say what does it mean? It is the ozone layer depletion that is causing that. It is not the hardship of the economy. It is the ozone layer. Two factors that can contribute to the purchasing power. That is inflation, that of the depreciation rate. We inherit inflation at the rate of 70%. As we speak, it's less than 11%. During your 8-year rule, you increased the inflation so much, the depreciation of the city was 238%. Haven't you reduced the purchasing power of the consumers? So who is contributing to the area? Who is doing that? These are the measures that, as a government, we have decided to undertake to ensure stability in the economy. And that is why we are urging members here to support us for the approval of this budget, so that we can carry on the numerous activities that the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection is supposed to execute. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Honorable Comfort Doyo Kujo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To add my voice to the budget statement presented by the Finance Minister, Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta, for this Honorable House to approve the budget statement policy of the government for the year ending 31st December 2022. Mr. Speaker, we have to position this statement very well for the budget statement to know its position. This budget statement belongs to the dustbin. The whole budget statement belongs to the dustbin, Mr. Speaker. I'm speaking as gender committee member, and the budget statement has captured 1,143,421,000 for gender ministry. Mr. Speaker, to do what? The ministry is only working on school feeding. The rest, all we need to do is to close that ministry because nothing good is going on there. Mr. Speaker, as a long-serving gender committee member, we have oversight responsibilities on gender ministry. Mr. Speaker, page 204 and page 204, line 1036, read, Mr. Speaker, the ministry observed the celebration. The ministry observed and celebrated the 2021 International Women's Day to increase awareness on gender equality and women's empowerment. At where? We were here and we dressed up as women, waiting for them to even tell us where the celebration is going to take place so that we join them. We didn't hear anything from them. Mr.